Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. In these fireside chats, I sit down with people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes. My guest today is O'Brien McMahon. O'Brien's an executive vice president with Lockton, helping HR and business leaders build better employee benefits, compensation, and retirement programs. He hosts People Business with O'Brien McMahon, a podcast exploring the human element of work. O'Brien has met with over 300 companies in the last decade and enjoys helping leaders make the most of themselves and the people around them. Welcome to Behind the Build, O'Brien. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Curtis. It should be a fun conversation.
I'm sure we have tons to talk about. But before we dive in, I have to know a couple of things. You wrote a children's book. There's a children's book out called How You Become You.
That is true.
I want to hear, what was the inspiration behind this? How long ago did this come out? Tell me a little bit about the book.
Sure. So I've always enjoyed writing, have dabbled, writing terrible songs growing up and bad poetry for girlfriends, and have taken some stabs at some longer form prose writing. But I have two young boys, 6 and 4, and have always liked the thought of writing something for them, leaving something behind. And at the same time, at work, I'm involved with our own leadership development program, which we've been running now for about 5 years. And the guy who leads those sessions has a framework that we've all used to build a strong sense of self. He calls it building a strong core. And I've done all those exercises, continue to work one-on-one with one of those coaches every week, and have gotten a lot out of it. And just one night, I don't even remember what the impetus was, but I just started writing a poem called How You Become You. And it was basically taking some of that and just distilling it down into a little bit more of an "Oh, the places you'll go" type format and type melody. And it wound up coming out pretty quickly. And I sent it to the folks in the group and just said, hey, thought you might get a kick out of this. And a lot of them who had kids wound up reporting back that they had shared it over dinner with their families, and it had led to some like really deep conversations, both with young kids and with older high school kids. And so I was like, all right, well, that's pretty cool. And then the owner of the company was like, you got to publish this. Like, this is great. And so with his blessing, took me about 2 years to kind of go through that journey and get it published. And it came out about a year and a half ago, but it's been awesome. I found an illustrator. She did a great job, kind of metaphorically telling the story that I was telling in words through the images. And while it's self-published and, sales, we're not setting any records with sales. The responses that I've gotten back from the people who have read it, the several hundred that have read it, it really been amazing and heartfelt. And so it's been a really fun project.
That's amazing. I have 2 girls, 7 and 5, almost 7 and 5. So similar age gap. And this is when you start having a lot of those conversations. So where can I get it?
You can get it anywhere online that you would buy books. Just How You Become You by O'Brien McMahon. And it's really, it's meant to encourage people. It's meant to encourage the kids and the adults. So the real premise behind wanting to launch it was I was reading Oh, the Places You'll Go, which I think anyone with kids has read by Dr. Seuss. It's, I think, still the most popular graduation gift out there. And I was reading it to my son when he was 2, and I was like, he has no idea what this is. Right. But every time I read it, I get a little bit something more out of it. And I was like, why aren't there more books written towards adults? And then I opened the cover jacket, and it turns out that book was actually written as a college commencement speech. And then they turned it into a children's book. And it was the last book that he ever published. And I was like, it just clicked. Like, all of a sudden I was thinking about Pixar and all these children's stories that are really just adult human lessons.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, wouldn't it be fun to do that and be able to offer that to parents and offer it to kids and then be able to share that with my kids? And so it's really just about trying as much as you can, experiencing as much as you can in the world, and then getting some clarity on what do you love, what do you believe, and using that to guide how you live the rest of your life.
That's amazing. Very, very cool. Can't wait to get my hands on one, and absolutely will be one of those people reaching out to you to tell you the kind of conversations that it led to in my house. So you have a podcast. You've been hosting and producing it for over 5 years. Tell me a little bit about the People Business Podcast.
Sure. So when COVID hit, my job. Well, let me back up. My day job is reaching out to and working with often the HR team
Mm.
at mid-size, larger companies. And when COVID hit, that group of people in particular became the COVID response team at their companies, and they were underwater to say the least, for months. And we were talking as a business development team around, like, how do we reach this market in a meaningful way and without burning bridges? Because what we do is all about relationships. It's all about the long term. And so we wanted to be sensitive during that time and be supportive. I'm a huge fan of podcasts. I consume an unhealthy amount of hours of podcasts every week. And I love shows where you get a full perspective. It's longer form, so you get a real perspective on somebody's expertise or lived experience or something like that. And somebody said, well, have you ever thought about podcasting? And I had actually had a friend ask me years before if I wanted to do a podcast, but it was just like, I didn't need another hobby at that time, but this seemed like maybe a different scenario. And so I wrote down on a whiteboard one night all the things that I thought my market that I serve would be interested in. And it was all the people strategy, HR type
Mhm.
stuff. And then I wrote down on the other side all the things that I'm really interested in, which is personal development, achievement, psychology, behavior science, all of that kind of stuff. And I wrote business on one side and people on the other. And I literally the next morning, this has only happened the one time, I popped out of bed at 4 a.m. and was like, people business. It's not business people, it's people business. Every business is a people business. I don't have to select from this list. I can just do the whole whiteboard and
Yeah.
that becomes the show. And so I went out and I found a couple friends who had some really relevant content at that time for that market, that early COVID market, and piloted the episodes. And I actually have a production background from college. I wrote and directed and edited some short films for fun. None that you will ever see or will ever see the light of day, but it was a good experience. And I wound up building the skill set. So I was actually able to cut together a professional sounding show, and we launched it, and those episodes went well, and I scrambled to get more. And we've just been doing it for 5 years, 215-ish episodes while we're talking now.
Wow. I love that. And you know what? I mean, you nailed it. Every business is a people business. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, even if you're building B2B SaaS, right? Or if you are the ice cream shop down the street, or an education, daycare, you're in the people business.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a really powerful premise.
Well, and it's interesting now too, because I could hear somebody listening to this and saying, well, not for long, with the rise of AI. But I think every business is a people business still. And I think every person is in business. Everybody needs to support themselves. Even if you're going to work for someone else, like you're a business of one. You are going out and providing your services and somebody's paying you
That's right.
income for that.
That's right.
And even with AI, that dynamic's not going to change. We're all going to need to still fund our lives and lifestyles and, the vision for the future that we have. And so I think that these lessons around how to engage with people, well, first of all, how to engage with yourself, improve who you are, improve the quality of your thinking, the quality of your actions, improve then your interactions with other people, and then have the skill set to organize some people and lead them and communicate with them and try to achieve something together. I mean, those skills are just not going to go away whether AI takes away 50% of the jobs or not. It's still going to be valuable with people going out and trying to earn an income for themselves.
Right. Well, people aren't going away, and we're all consumers, right? So, I mean, I had a really interesting conversation with another entrepreneur last week discussing some similarities between all human beings and just the idea of startups, right? A human being, your life is very much like a startup, right? Even when we're young and we're growing and we're in search of validation, right? For good or for bad, right? Getting that
Yeah.
feedback, that early feedback is so important, right? It helps you better understand who you are, what your core competencies are, right? Just like a startup, right? And when a startup realizes where they're getting certain validation, you may go in those directions. You may choose to pivot and go in a different direction, right? Where, you can either build something in your life that's more meaningful or something more driven towards whatever kind of goals that you're seeking. You eventually find yourself in this maturation phase, et cetera. And so there are a lot of similarities. The jobs may go, they might change. The reality is they're more likely going to change rather than go. I mean, people are still going to be employed for a variety of different things. But people aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And we are consumers and we do interact with each other and we do collaborate with each other, whether it's personal or professional. And so, you know, it's astute, right? So give me some
Yeah.
advice, any tips or tricks that you have on podcasting, number one.
My only thing with podcasting is try to do something you're interested in and try to do something that is valuable to other people. I think the episodes that I've done that resonate the most are ones where I'm just interested. And I think that comes through. And the times when guests sort of compliment me for having created a fun experience for them, it's because I generally want them on the show and I'm excited about it. And I think people can feel that. So
Yeah.
I only know how my one show is put together, but I have heard that not every host does that. But yeah, I think people will forgive you for some audio quality. I think they'll forgive you for some rambling if you are having interesting conversations that are adding value or helping people think differently or better. I think that's all you can ask for.
Well, good advice. Definitely worked hard to get you here. So very interested in all the things we're going to get to talk about. So you've had a long and really impressive career at Lockton. I'd love to know more about that. First off, maybe you can tell everybody here, what is Lockton? What does the organization do?
Sure. So we're an insurance broker, at its most simple level. There are two sides to our business. There's the commercial insurance side, which is, any insurance a company would need to buy. And then there's the total reward side, which is where I've spent my 16 years at Lockton. And that is building all the different total rewards programs for companies. So the employee benefits program, the retirement program, the compensation programs that you're putting in place, your leave policies, all that kind of stuff, helping manage all of that. The thing that I really enjoy about that work is one, it's generally the most expensive part of a business, right? Their largest cost almost always is on compensation and benefits. Those are number one and number two. So you're dealing with something that has real significant financial impact. And on the other hand, it touches every single one of your employees. So it has real like emotional, cultural impact. And people talk about comp and they talk about their benefits all the time. You see it in the news all the time. And so being able to influence those things for a company, help them think about the type of employer they want to be, the type of experience they want to give people, the way they want people to feel working for them, what they want that partnership to be like or not be like.
Right.
I think that's the fun of what I do and what we do is being able to go beyond just like what's your copay or what's your LTIP, percentages across different structures. Like it's like, what are we trying to achieve? How do we want to make people feel? And then, building in that direction.
I love that. And I love the idea of starting with, what do we want people to feel, right? I think it can be really impactful. I'd love to hear, tell me about the kind of organizations that Lockton works with. When do they come to you? What are the problems and challenges that these folks at Lockton are obsessed with solving for them?
Sure. So our clients are what we would call middle market, upper middle market. So we're not generally going after the big jumbos. We have some large employers, but uh, and we're not going after the really small. We can do that work, but again, it's like we have some partners that we work with who do that work. It's the middle market. It's a business that has gotten more complex. It's grown to a place where there's a lot of complexity, but generally they are still understaffed. They've lean teams, and they need somebody who's going to bring a bunch of resources, but then make it really easy to access those resources and understand what to do with it. And that's where we try to stand out and differentiate. As far as why our clients come to us, um, it is really easy in the work that we're doing because we are working with our clients and our competitors are working with their clients, on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. It's really easy to fall stale. You kind of, what the other person's preferences are, what the company's going to say yes or no to. You vetted a lot of options maybe in your first year or two working together, and you just kind of fall into a groove. I think one of the things that we have done is our process. We've built a process and we've built incentives to keep it fresh. And so I think on day one, how do we differentiate from our competitors? I think we differentiate decently well. I think we're a little bit better in a lot of ways. I think we really differentiate over time though. And it's
Okay.
hard to sell that up front, but I think over time, the incentives we have in place, the process that we have in place just forces us to look and just ask the question, like, how do we get a little bit better today? How do we get a little bit better today? And if you ask that question consistently, you get a lot better over time.
You get a lot better over time.
Yeah.
So what does your role look like as EVP? Tell me a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah. So, don't let the title fool you. I'm still building, my book of business and clients. I'm
Yeah.
out talking to clients and prospective clients every day.
Mhm.
Um, had a call with both of those before this. We were trying to pitch a new piece of business and was talking to a client who's having some turnover. Um, so really that's the job. I think as you move on in the organization within Lockton, though, there are opportunities to, demonstrate leadership and step up. And so most recently I was invited onto our Midwest Executive Committee. So in addition to the day-to-day work that I'm doing and for no additional compensation, I have I think it's a privilege to,
Yeah.
be involved in the leadership decisions, how we're making investments in the business and in our people, and um, where we're going to head in the future. So that's kind of my fun new challenge.
I like that. I mean, and sometimes that challenge, getting to be part of that is, the compensation sort of, getting that opportunity
Yeah.
is unique and it's kind of special and it's rewarding in a different way, right? Not in the
Yeah.
paycheck necessarily, but in being part of growing something and building something, right? And being part
No,
of
for sure. Yeah. And
decision.
and the more art I mentioned incentives. I think one of the things that Jack Lockton, who founded our company, passed away a number of years ago now, but um, I think one thing that he got right was the incentives in the model. And I think in a lot of B2B sales worlds, it can be really dog eat dog. There can be a lot of internal competition. You getting a deal means I don't get a deal. It's money in your pocket is money out of my pocket. There's like, I've worked in some places before Lockton where it had that environment. And one of the things I really value about where I work now is that the incentives are aligned so that when we all do well, we all do well.
Yeah. You have a lot of expertise when it comes to total reward strategies,
Mhm.
right? What employees want and need, touching on this incentives, 100% agree with what you're saying. Um, and a lot of the keys to things like workplace happiness, to employee satisfaction, you seem really passionate. I can feel that it's palpable. Where did this passion come from?
I'm just a dork.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
Um,
No, yes, I am, I think. But I don't know. I like building things. I
mhm.
like learning and I like growing and I like becoming better and more capable in the world. And I think sales is just a great proving ground for that. I mean, I've been doing this 16 years, and the other day, had to walk myself back off a cliff again when we missed another deal that we were going after that we were excited about. And I laid my whole process out on a whiteboard, and I found 3 different areas to focus on where we can improve. And it's like, it's just every day there's the opportunity to do that. So 1, I like that. And then 2, I like coaching other people. I like helping people. I like seeing people reach their potential. I did a couple years as a part-time CrossFit coach on the side. And I just love like watching people do things that they didn't realize they were capable of. And I think in a service business like we are, where we're affecting people and we're affecting dollars the way that I described before, I think there's really an opportunity to help and to coach and to help our clients see around corners in ways that they just aren't capable because they don't have the experience or the reps in the way that we do. So I think that that's all fun.
I feel like, and once you get a taste of that, right? I think it
Yeah.
just makes you want it even more. Before I pivot to a different topic, I wanted to ask you something that I think some of our audience might be wondering. A lot of our viewers are small business owners, leaders in young growing organizations. When we talk about total rewards, I think oftentimes this is a term that many are unfamiliar with, or really kind of what that encompasses or what it means exactly. Tell us a little bit about, what does total rewards mean? Why is it important to an organization and their workforce?
Yeah. At the simplest level, you can think about all the cash compensation that you provide to your employees. So the actual cash you pay them, any bonuses that you might give them, or financial incentives, what you contribute to their benefits, what you contribute to their 401k, the types of leave policies and vacation policies you put in place that you're going to pay people for when they're not working. Like all of that would fall into total rewards. Some people will add non-cash compensation. They'll add training and development and mentorship in there. You can if you want to. I think it starts to muddy it a little bit. I think just, what is the company paying for that provides value to you? And I think comp, benefits, retirement, and leave are kind of the big 4 in that market.
Okay. So, going to take a turn into some of the challenges that you see in business today. You talk with a ton of business leaders. What are some of the people problems that you see in many organizations that create roadblocks for, I think, certain initiatives or overall organizational goals?
Yeah. So, I mean, I hear some funny stories out there with different people problems that they're facing. The one that I think is just a trip right now, and one that I've heard a lot of HR people trying to navigate, is employees who are working multiple full-time jobs and who are like kind of trying to, dip on both sides here and get away with that, and it becomes unproductive. I think there's a really interesting conversation where I'm not the one to unpack this, but I think there's a really interesting conversation to, if you hire somebody and they can do most of the job that you're asking them to do with AI, and that frees up their time to go do other things and get paid in other ways, like, is that wrong? Or is that just capitalism and ingenious on their part?
You're not the one to unpack this, because this could turn into a whole other episode.
This would be, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it, but I'm not an expert in it in any way, shape, or form. I think it's an interesting conversation. And I think, in fact, this is where a lot of articles that you might read are going around. Are we just going to turn into, I read one last week actually on, is white collar the new gig economy? And so there's a whole interesting thing there. What I will say, as far as the work that I do on a general basis, one of the biggest problems that I see companies dealing with is how they communicate to their people. I don't think there is a company I have talked to, whether it's a client or a prospect out there in the market, this within the last 12 months, that has not in some way brought up the fact that they are struggling to communicate with their people. Our people don't understand the value of what we're offering them. They don't understand how to use it. we send them a bunch of things and they don't read them, and then they come to us later with questions, but we had clearly sent that information multiple times. It's just the way that companies are communicating with employees seems to be broken. And I think it's just, my take on it is, I think the world has evolved in how we are communicating and how we are consuming information. And corporate communications are largely doing the same things they did in the early 2000s, maybe even in the late 90s. They're just doing more of it, or maybe it looks slicker or more modern. But the actual channels that they're communicating through, the way that they're reaching out to employees, has largely not changed in the last 20 years.
Wow. And that's kind of crazy to think, despite all the advancement, and
Yeah.
just
That's not to say things don't look better, right? They,
yeah,
they look better. They're, we're doing, it's in emails or Slack, maybe it's in Slack now, where it was in email before and it was in print before that. But it's like, it's often still the same messages. It's often just, we're going to pump more of it, or we're going to make it look sharper. But I don't see new mediums embraced as much. I don't see new modes of communication, or, yeah. So I don't necessarily blame
yeah,
communications people internally, or I don't blame HR people internally, because I don't think, like, HR is asked to have so many skill sets. I think we're all asked to have so many skill sets today. And marketing and communications is its own skill set. It happens to be something that I studied in college. So I was a communications major. I
yeah,
also like writing. I'm also a salesperson. So, like, I've spent a lot of time thinking about communications, but most of my clients have not. Even a lot of our team members have not. And so I think it's a natural problem, but I think it's one that companies are going to have to embrace, and they're going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable trying some new things.
yeah, 100%. Going back to one of the things we were talking about the total rewards, I know aligning compensation and benefits and all the total rewards between the workforce and employers can be a big problem. Sometimes it's a sticky point, right? What is it that team members really want from organizations that they work for? What have you heard? What do you see? When you're communicating with a lot of these leaders, what priorities do the workforce have when they think about these things?
Yeah. So it's easy to think that more is always better.
Right.
And in some ways, sure, it is. If the original study around people's happiness, people not getting any happier above $75,000 a year, like, that's kind of been disproven. Yes, there's a huge increase in happiness up to now. It's, I think, about $95,000 in income, but your happiness doesn't stop above that mark. Like, your happiness continues to go up after that point. It's just that the next dollar earns just a little bit less happiness than the dollar before it. And so there's diminishing returns, but it still is an upward trend. And so there is an element of, yeah, you pay people more, they live better lives, their financial stresses go away, and that improves happiness. And, so there is a little bit of an element to that. But I like to just distill it down to some basic principles, and just think, like, what do people actually want out of their compensation? What they want is to feel appreciated. What they want is to feel recognized compared to their peer group. So, and then the third thing is, they want to be able to at least be on a trajectory toward the lifestyle that they have in their head. We
Yeah.
all have some image in our head of what we want our lives to be down the road. And if we are not earning on that path, there's some cognitive pain there, and we're much more likely to go try to find another job, or, move around and shift to go try to find that. And so I think if you can recognize people for their service and pay them compared to market, make sure that they feel like they're getting a good deal compared to their peers, because we're comparison animals. Like, it's the whole keeping up with the Joneses is a real thing. It's how we're programmed, because um, our happiness, or our pick any emotion, is often just a reflection of how it compares to what other people are experiencing or having, um, which is scary. And you got to do some like processing to get out of that. But I mean, that's how we're operating. That's the operating system we have. And so making sure that you don't get too out of whack with that within your workforce. And then, yeah, paying people at least some amount and escalating their pay at some rate to which they feel like they can achieve their hopes and dreams. On the benefit side, it's, do I feel protected? Can I get sick? Can my family get sick or injured and go through these really difficult times without having a horrible experience outside of whatever the illness or pain is? Like, is the system easy to use? Can I get the help I need? Can it not break the bank? Even if I have to pay something, can it not devastate me financially? Do I feel safe and secure and protected? And then I think retirement plans are often an extension of that. Do I feel like my future is secure? If I'm on a path to some vision of what my life is going to be, does that path extend all the way to the grave? Or is there some anxiety at the end of my life? And then leave, which is the fourth one, is, can I actually get out and enjoy it? Do I have time to connect with myself, to connect with my friends, with my family? Can I enjoy this life that I'm working so hard to build? And I think if you remember those elements, maybe you can make some adjustments to your programs to sort of align with those things. Maybe you just communicate it differently. But ultimately, we are emotional animals. We're storytelling animals. And if you can tell the story or help people see the story in what you're offering,
Mhm.
oftentimes that's what's needed more than, hey, give me another 10 cents an hour.
Yeah. Um, I think that's a really interesting takeaway. Also, and I don't hear a lot of people mentioning or at least acknowledging the fact that I think you're right. We are, instinctively we compare ourselves. It's we talk a lot about feeling valued, right? As a culture and a community, we talk a lot about work life balance and feeling protected, being appreciated by the organization that we work with. Um, but seldomly do you hear leaders talking about the fact that we are by default, that's kind of how we're wired to sort of compare ourselves. That's what market rate is. It's the rate at which, right, our peers are being paid or compensated for the same job, and other organizations. So I think that pointing that out, highlighting it, at least bringing it to our attention, is actually really important, because we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah. So I had a podcast guest who's become a friend. His name is Jason Lauritsen, great consultant, HR consultant, and coach. And he made the comment that I really like, which is, companies often look to employees in contractual terms, like, how much are we going to pay? How often do we want you to show up? What are the transactional terms of this agreement? But employees are joining an employer with a relationship lens. They want to know how they're going to feel working there. They want to know
Right.
the story that they get to tell themselves by doing this job. Are they built? What skill set are they building? We all want to build mastery in something. That's another part of humanity. And so, like, who are they becoming by working there? That's how employees are thinking about it. And again, back to communications, I think if you can get out of the contractual mindset, I
Mhm.
mean, you got to do all the contractual stuff and figure all the legalese out. But when you're communicating with people, if you can do it through a relationship lens, you'd be much more impactful.
And honestly, it kind of leads me into this next sort of thought, is that I think that that's a blind spot for leaders, right? Understanding what your workers want, and what they expect, what you expect from them. But you're right, employers think of it in a very transactional way.
Yeah. Well, and you
And
and I are just as guilty of this too, I'm sure. Like, this is another principle that applies to presentations,
yeah,
where often presentations are created with an analytical lens. Here's the facts, here's the things you need to know. But the people who are sitting listening to the presentation, they're listening to the story. They are processing in their head What does this mean for me? What does this allow me to do? Do I feel okay or not? What is this going to help me become? And often presentations fall flat because we're not connecting to the stories or helping people build the stories that they're telling in their head. And so it's natural when we are trying to communicate something to others, we often distill it down to just some quantitative data. But when we are on the other side of the table, we are consuming it qualitatively. And so I think it's a good thing for all of us to keep in mind all the time when we are trying to improve our interactions or communicate something or influence some type of thinking or behavior.
How well are, just, generally speaking, I mean, how well are employers meeting um, their employees' wants and needs with these total rewards packages, if they even do? How do employers even gauge this? How do they know?
I think most are doing okay. I
Okay.
don't think this is something that's totally broken. I think most employers are getting a lot of what they need from their employees. I think employers often actually put more pressure on themselves and can be doing themselves a disservice because they're trying to add a bunch of new things. They want to make it feel new and fresh. In reality, I think if a company is providing a core set of benefits that takes care of 90% of a person's needs, your medical, your dental, a life insurance policy, disability, even though that's super undervalued, disability policies are really important. Just those basics, and you offer them at a decent level, and then you're paying people fairly or a little bit above market, like that's really what people want. And then they want to engage with all of the other elements. So I created a couple years ago what I call the hierarchy of employee needs. And the base level is rewards. I do think if you're not meeting at least a base level of needs when it comes to the rewards you're offering, people will leave. But once you're satisfying just like a basic level, just like in Maslow's hierarchy, with your physiological needs, like we need to be able to eat, we need to be able to sleep safely, we need to be able to go to the bathroom, like our basic physiological needs. We don't need the best food. We don't need a gold toilet. We don't need, like the like luxury everything. Sure, that stuff's nice, but that, like, most people, if you just give them a basic level of like decent food, clean water, a a decent dwelling, like they're good. And then what they want is connection and community, and want to be building skills in something and contributing to the world. That's what we want. And work is kind of the same. Like once you give people a basic element, then focus on the humanity of the workplace. Focus on improving your leaders. Leadership is the next rung because every problem is a leadership problem. Every decision that's made, the way people feel, is all going to be based on the leaders and the environment that they create. Above that, I stole directly from Daniel Pink's book, Drive. Like the motivators, what really motivates people is building mastery, having autonomy, and connectedness, being connected to the people around them, being connected to the mission, something greater than themselves. So I don't think companies are broken in the way that they're doing their rewards. I think you could actually clean it up and simplify it in a lot of cases and improve the experience of it, and then focus on those other elements of humanity.
So for a small bit, now I know you work mostly with mid market and some a little larger. What about a small business? What about a small business or a young organization? How do they start creating a total rewards package and take actions to build a happy, healthy community with
Yeah.
satisfied employees? And one of the reasons that I ask is that oftentimes it's the small business that might suffer disproportionately from the turnover, right? I mean, one person leaves out of a team of 10, right? That's 10% of your workforce, or a team of
Yeah.
20, right? That's 5%, right? One person leaves out of a team of 1,000. Right. So you see that they might, small business might be suffering disproportionately, but might want to create this community that you're talking about, might want to have a package like this that incentivizes their people. So what are some steps that they can take?
Again, I don't think you need to try to compete with Google or Goldman. You don't need to be that as a small business. I
Mm,
think the benefit that you have as a small business is you have the ability to really connect with your people and be transparent and have them understand what it means to work there and the mission that you have in front of you. There's a lot of purpose that goes into these small businesses. And so I think you lean into that stuff and then you do as much as you can. You start with compensation and you provide as much compensation as you can for your people. And
yeah,
you're just transparent about where those limitations are. And then you have a solid medical plan. And when you can add a dental plan and when you can add some disability insurance, or offer it on a voluntary basis if you can't pay for it as an employer. There's a lot of benefits that you could offer voluntarily. Maybe you get one or two people who take it, but you're still providing something to those
right.
people. So I do think there are ways that you can build into this
Yeah.
while leaning into the advantages that you do have.
And what would you say, if you were advising a smaller organization, what are the indicators that show the leaders whether or not they have the happy workplace or that they're doing it right?
I think you just ask your people.
Yeah.
I don't think there needs to be some big mystery, especially in a small employer. You know, hey, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? What else are you seeing out there? Hey, I would love to be able to pay you guys more, but we can't. But here's the path I have, and if we can hit these marks, you know, then this is what I'll be able to offer you. Setting some vision for them in the future. And then I think what indicates a good culture in a small business is the same as what indicates a good culture in a big business, or it's what indicates a good culture in your family. Like, is there open, honest, transparent communication happening? Do people feel connected to each other? Are they willing to share with each other and lean on each other? Are they willing to ask for help, admit that they don't know something? Are they willing to do extra work for their colleagues? Um, are they evangelical about what you're doing? Do they feel connected to the mission? Like, all that stuff applies to you and your spouse or you and your family, and it applies to your small business, and it applies to your larger department. It applies to your global enterprise. Like, that's the one thing about doing the podcast that I've really come to appreciate. And I kind of always leaned this way, but it is just, I just see it all the time, that the principles of what it means to be a human being, to be on a team, like, they're the same. Like, anytime you are trying to do something to improve yourself, the principles are the same.
Yeah.
Anytime you come together with another person or group of people and are trying to function well, the principles are the same. It's just how they get expressed.
I like that. Actually, a lot. I'm kind of curious. Like you made a mention about something sort of similar, but are there are there metrics that leaders should be watching? People related metrics. Are there certain pieces of data that could be helpful for leaders when it comes to supporting their people? What are they, and do you actually think business leaders are monitoring them?
I'm going to admit that I'm not a people analytics person. I think that there are some great companies and experts out there who have some really insightful stuff. Hey, if you see this type of thing, on somebody's calendar, they're more likely to turn over in the next 6 months. Like, I've talked to some of those people. I know those things are out there. I'd be a little over my skis if I took a stab at that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Outside
Um,
of the basics. I mean, obviously, if people are turning over, if people are complaining about a manager, if the lights are flashing
yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
sirens are going off, address it. Like, listen. I think that's the big thing, is just listen. Like, there's so much power to paying attention to what your people are saying and feeling and how they're expressing themselves. And it's easy to skim over that stuff.
Give me some ideas of some people related insights or maybe cultural competency that tomorrow's business leaders, for example, will have to develop in order to thrive. You've mentioned a lot of really interesting things that are contributors to make you know good cultures, right, and good relationships between I think leadership and other members of the organization. But um, interested to hear how you might see this developing over time, and what are some of the things that tomorrow's leaders are going to have to develop in order to get there.
So my half non-answer to this is I think leaders need to remember that humans are humans.
Yeah.
And I've read and enjoyed Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. If you've tried it and you've read it and you are like, what is this? This is terrible. You probably read a bad translation. There's a newer, I think the newest translation is by a professor out of the University of Virginia. It's, I don't know, maybe 15 years old now. It's like a black and red cover. Try that one. If you still don't like it, fine, I'll give that to you. But when you read that and you think about the fact that it was the private diary of probably the most powerful man in the world at the time,
Mhm.
and he's dealing with the same bullshit that you and I are dealing with every day, both internally and externally. He's dealing with his own doubts, his own insecurity, his own ego. He's dealing with people who are trying to take him down, political opponents. Um, it's amazing that the most powerful man in the world 2,000 years ago and little old me today are dealing with almost the same thing when we roll out of bed in the morning, and our brains are working the same way. And just because AI comes around or just because the next thing comes around does not mean that human beings are going to change. So on the one hand, I say, get clarity on what it means to be a human being and what human beings want from their experience with you and with your company. Then pay attention to what is going on today and where the world is going tactically so that you can express those fundamental principles in a modern way that resonates. So AI is not going to change the fact that we all want to be building mastery and we all want autonomy and any of that, but it's going to give us new ways to do that.
Yeah.
Communications, back to what I talked about companies struggling with right now, like the way we want to be communicated to, the stories we want to tell, the messages we want to be receiving, the way we want to feel about those communications is the same as it's always been. But now we respond more to short form video than we do to at home mailers. And so I think paying attention to the principles, and if you get clarity on the principles, then you can swap in tactics and adjust your tactics over time to be more fresh and modern.
Totally agree with that. People aren't going away. People's needs are not going to go away. Their wants and wishes also are not going to go away. And frankly, they may not change that much, right? Just like our hierarchy of needs. I think it's just the different mechanisms that we have at our fingertips to be able to, press on and make some of those things happen are going to evolve like dramatically. And
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that that's actually really great advice.
Especially if you've got a good thing going. Like
Yeah.
you can take your great culture, like Lockton, I think has done a great job of this. We talk all the time about what it means to work at Lockton and what Lockton stands for. And Jack, as I said, passed away like 20 something years ago, but his commandments are in every office still. There are videos of him playing all over the country, talking about all over the world, talking about what it means to work at Lockton, the opportunity that we have. And now the way that we express that has changed and modernized. We were not doing video clips in the office when I started 16 years ago.
Right.
It was coming out in different formats, but the messaging is the same. It's evolved, but we've stayed true to who we are and what the business stands for. And I think that, one, kudos to the Lockton family for doing that, but two, I
Right.
think it's a really smart business decision because everybody stays really, really grounded, and yet we all get that dopamine hit or that those good vibes from the modern take on it. We get the novelty we're looking for, but it's rooted in something really foundational.
Um, which also kind of answers that next sort of leading question on how do you see your own work evolving, sort of in line with this. And I think you just kind of really described how it's evolved
Yeah.
or at least with the organization, and more than likely it's gonna continue in that direction.
Yeah. Well, and I think what we do, there's the strategy element to it, and then there's a service element to it. And I think service is going to make a comeback. And in an age of AI and technology, I think service is going to continue to have a high value. Um,
Yeah,
and so
I
I,
think
I, do, I do think there's going to be a place for it, even if the tactics of how we're engaged with our clients change over the next 10 years.
100% agree. O'Brien, How You Become You, children's book that you can get anywhere you can get books on the internet. I will be getting my copy today, and the People Business podcast, right? Tell us where we can find that, how often you release new episodes before we wrap up.
Yeah, so we are currently releasing every other week. We did weekly for about the first 4.5 years, but have switched to bi-weekly now. You can find it anywhere. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Awesome. I really appreciate you being here, O'Brien. You have pretty amazing insights. Everybody needs to listen to this, and I hope that they get to check that out as well. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and this helps me catalyze my own thinking. So it's valuable for me to actually have to say this stuff out loud and make sure I at least sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Love it. Well, I appreciate y'all tuning in to Mustard Up Voices Behind the Build. Please like and share this episode. Be sure to subscribe while you're at it. Drop by mustardhub.com to learn how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. Until next time.